every crime is a wound on the world. We're here to dissect it, layer by layer, to find the truth buried within. This is Anatomy of Crime. The sun beats down on New Mexico's State Road 47 with an unforgiving intensity. It is a ribbon of asphalt cutting through an arid, expansive landscape where the horizon seems to stretch on forever. In such a vast space, it is easy to feel small, and even easier to disappear. On September 20th, 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico rode her neon-pink Huffy mountain bike out into this harsh beauty. She was a creature of habit, an ambitious college student with a rigid daily schedule, and this 18-mile ride was a routine she rarely broke. But the desert, for all its stillness, can swallow a life without a sound. Tara never returned. Today, we dissect the anatomy of a Polaroid mystery. We will explore the paralyzing effect of small-town rumors, the allegations of law enforcement cover-ups, and the agonizing ambiguity of a single piece of photographic evidence that turned a local disappearance into a haunting, global enigma. Tara Calico was a young woman defined by her drive. She was an extrovert, a dedicated student at the University of New Mexico, and a fiercely independent spirit who worked as a bank teller while planning her future. Her life in the small town of Belen, about 30 miles south of Albuquerque, was full and vibrant. She was known for her energy, often seen riding her brightly colored bicycle along the shoulder of Highway 47, a cassette player clipped to her waistband, headphones delivering the sounds of the band Boston as she pedaled. This routine was so established that locals recognized her. Her mother, Patty Doel, often rode with her, but after being frightened by motorists driving uncomfortably close, Patty stopped. She pleaded with her daughter to carry Mace, but Tara, possessing the invincibility of youth, declined. The morning of September 20th began like any other. Tara told her mother to come get her around noon if she was not back, as they had plans to play tennis. At 11:45 a.m., the house was quiet. By 12:05 p.m., Patty Doel was in her car, driving Tara's usual route. What she found was a chilling absence. There was no sign of Tara, nor her neon-pink bike. In the days that followed, search parties combed the unforgiving terrain. The only physical traces left behind were a shattered piece of her Sony Walkman and a Boston cassette tape, scattered along the roadside, suggesting a sudden and violent interruption to her ride. Bike tracks led into the dirt, but they offered no clear narrative, only a silent testament to a struggle. The investigation quickly stalled, suffocated by a lack of physical evidence and the vastness of the surrounding desert. Belen was a tight-knit community, and the disappearance of a prominent local girl cast a long, dark shadow. Weeks turned into months. Patty Doel transformed her home into a command center, driven by a mother's relentless desperation. But the desert yielded nothing. It seemed Tara had simply evaporated. Then, nearly 10 months later, on June 15, 1989, the trajectory of this investigation shifted from a local tragedy to an international nightmare, all because of a single piece of instant film found over 1,500 miles away. In the parking lot of a convenience store in Port St. Joe, Florida, a woman noticed a Polaroid photograph lying face down in a parking space. A white Toyota cargo van had just pulled out of that spot. She picked up the photo, turned it over, and stepped into a horror story. The image showed a young woman and a young boy, bound and lying in the back of what appeared to be a van. Their mouths were covered with duct tape. Their expressions were etched with a primal, suffocating terror. Beside the young woman, resting on the fabric, was a copy of the book My Sweet Audrina by V.C. Andrews. It was Tara Calico's favorite author. The anatomy of this photograph is a masterclass in psychological torment. It is poorly lit, cramped, and claustrophobic. The visual data is limited, yet overwhelmingly traumatic. For investigators and for Patty Doelle, the Polaroid presented an agonizing ambiguity. Was this Tara? The physical resemblance was striking. The young woman in the photo had a cowlick on her right temple, just like Tara. She had a visible scar on her leg, which Patty insisted matched an injury Tara had sustained in a car accident. And then there was the book, a detail too specific to ignore. The boy in the photo was initially identified by relatives as Michael Henley, a local New Mexico boy who had vanished in the Zuni Mountains earlier that same year. For a brief, terrifying moment, a narrative coalesced: a roaming predator abducting children from New Mexico and holding them captive across the country. But photographic evidence, especially in the era of instant film, is notoriously subjective. It lacks the definitive nature of a fingerprint or a strand of DNA. It is a puzzle missing crucial pieces. The FBI analyzed the photograph and concluded it was inconclusive. They could not say with certainty that the young woman was Tara Calico. Scotland Yard, however, conducted their own analysis and determined that the girl in the photo was indeed Tara. Meanwhile, analysts at the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed with both, stating that the photo was not of Tara. This conflicting expert testimony paralyzed the investigation. Instead of providing a clear direction, the Polaroid became a mirror, reflecting the desperate hopes of a grieving family and the frustrating limitations of forensic science. The Michael Henley connection ultimately unraveled. His remains were discovered in the Zuni Mountains near where he went missing, confirming he had succumbed to the elements, not an abductor. The boy in the photograph was not Michael. This revelation shattered the unified theory of a single predator and plunged the identity of the two victims in the Polaroid back into the realm of the unknown. Was the photo an elaborate, cruel hoax, or was it genuine documentary evidence of a horrific crime involving two completely different victims? The white Toyota van seen leaving the Florida parking lot was never located. The driver was never identified. The Polaroid, initially a beacon of hope for solving the case, devolved into a permanent source of torment. While the world fixated on the Florida photograph, a darker, more insidious narrative was quietly festering back in Belen, New Mexico. The anatomy of this mystery cannot be fully understood without dissecting the paralyzing effect of small-town rumors. Over the years, whispers began to circulate through the community. These were not tales of a roaming serial killer, but of local boys, teenagers known to Tara, who had allegedly been driving a truck that morning. The rumors suggested they had been harassing her, perhaps throwing something at her, and in a moment of reckless panic, they hit her. Realizing what they had done, instead of seeking help, they disposed of her body and her bicycle. These allegations gained alarming traction because they implicated individuals connected to local law enforcement. Whispers suggested that fathers had protected sons, that evidence had been ignored, and that a wall of silence had been erected by those sworn to uphold the law. Former Valencia County Sheriff Rene Rivera publicly stated he believed this theory. He claimed he knew what happened and who was responsible, suggesting that multiple men were involved in her death and the subsequent cover-up. He stated that without a body, he could not make an arrest. The district attorney's office countered, demanding physical evidence rather than hearsay. This standoff created a toxic environment where truth was obscured by suspicion and institutional distrust. The allegations of a cover-up represent a fatal flaw in the architecture of justice. When a community loses faith in its investigators, the investigation itself rots from the inside out. Informants are silenced by fear of retribution. Evidence, whether physical or anecdotal, is viewed through a lens of extreme skepticism. For the Doel family, the rumors in Belen were a second violation. They were forced to consider that the people responsible for Tara's disappearance were not faceless monsters in a white van, but neighbors, acquaintances, people they might pass in the grocery store. The agonizing ambiguity of the Polaroid was now matched by the paralyzing ambiguity of local complicity. Patty Doel left New Mexico in 2003, eventually settling in Florida. She had spent decades chasing shadows, scrutinizing thousands of faces in crowds, forever haunted by the girl in the photograph. She passed away in 2006, never knowing the truth about her daughter's fate. Her relentless pursuit remains a testament to a mother's love, while the unresolved nature of the case stands as a monument to investigative failure. The Belen police, the FBI, and various task forces have periodically reopened the files, conducted new interviews, and excavated potential burial sites based on deathbed confessions and anonymous tips, yet the desert holds its secrets tight. Tara Calico and her neon-pink bicycle have never been found. We are left to examine the fractured anatomy of a case, defined by what is missing. The physical absence of Tara Calico is compounded by the evidentiary black hole created by the Florida Polaroid. It is a piece of evidence that tells us everything about terror and nothing about identity. It forces us to confront the reality that seeing is not always knowing. Furthermore, the Belen rumors highlight the destructive power of secrets in a closed society. Whether the truth lies in the back of a van in Florida or beneath the arid soil of Valencia County, the systems designed to find that truth were fatally compromised by a lack of definitive science and a surplus of local fear. The disappearance of Tara Calico remains a frozen nightmare, a narrative suspended in the agonizing space between a hopeful photograph and a whispered local confession, proving that sometimes the deepest horrors are not those we can see, but those we are entirely unable to prove. This has been Anatomy of Crime, where the truth is never simple, but always worth seeking.